Welcome. We always look forward to the World Cup every 4 years as a footballing celebration, full of festivities and legendary goals that bring joy to nations. But imagine this tournament, which is supposed to unite the world, suddenly becoming the cause of a real war, with tanks and planes, or a player making a mistake and scoring an own goal, only to be greeted with 6 bullets in his chest upon returning home, as if he were a war criminal. If we turn the camera a little behind the scenes, we'll discover that the World Cup hides terrifying dark chapters in its history. The bottom line is, football sometimes brings out the worst and ugliest aspects of humanity, from matches turning into bloody battlefields and mafias infiltrating stadiums, to the psychological trauma and media hypocrisy we've recently witnessed in its most glamorous form. Today, we'll open the dark files of the biggest tournament on Earth and give you the gist of 5 unbelievable nightmares and events that occurred in World Cup history. Get your coffee ready and relax, because what you're about to hear will change your perspective on this game forever. Let's start now with 1966. England, which always boasts about being the birthplace of football, finally won the honor of hosting the World Cup. The English had prepared celebrations, deployed police forces, and set up an exhibition in central London to display the original Jules Rimet World Cup trophy, made of pure gold, so people could come and take pictures with it. They had heavy security, alarms, and created a huge crowd. But the bottom line is, on March 20th, just months before the tournament, the trophy was stolen in broad daylight. Imagine the scandal. The superpower with the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world had its most important sporting trophy stolen from the heart of its capital. The international press ridiculed them, Queen Elizabeth was embarrassed, and the FIFA president at the time nearly had a stroke. Scotland Yard, Britain's most powerful police force, mobilized thousands, searched every inch of the cities, interrogated mafia gangs, and offered astronomical rewards. But the result was zero. The trophy had vanished. The English, in their despair, went bald. A fake copy of the trophy was secretly made so that they could proceed with the tournament if they couldn't find the original. And here comes the twist that blows the mind and brings Britain to its knees. A week after the theft, a simple British citizen named David Corbett was out for a walk with his dog in a park in South London. This dog, whose name is Pickles, suddenly went sniffing under a tree and began digging in the dirt. David was surprised to see the dog digging for him and found an old newspaper roll tied with string. He opened it and was shocked by what he found. The Golden World Cup was found buried under the tree. The point here, folks, is that what Scotland Yard, British intelligence, and their trained police dogs couldn't do, a regular stray dog out for a walk looking for a bone accomplished. Britain breathed a sigh of relief, and Pickles the dog became a national hero. They even invited him to the official World Cup ceremony, gave him a silver medal, and he got to eat free meat for a whole year, courtesy of a food company. The bottom line, folks, is that this story proves to you that security bluster is sometimes just an allurement, and that no matter how powerful a nation you are, your reputation and entire history can be saved by a dog through sheer chance. Now let's move on to Central America, specifically to 1969. The point, folks, is that we always say football is life or death as a form of exaggeration and fanaticism, but in this story, football was literally death. The whole thing started in the World Cup qualifiers between 2 neighboring countries, El Salvador and Honduras. The 2 countries already had political problems and border skirmishes, and refugees were involved, but football was what loosened the screws. And the madness began in the first leg in Honduras. Honduran fans surrounded the El Salvador team's hotel, and all night they beat drums and threw stones so the players couldn't sleep. The next day, El Salvador lost, and because of the loss and the injustice, an 18-year-old Salvadoran girl was so upset that she shot herself and committed suicide. El Salvador considered her a national hero and held an official funeral for her, and blood boiled in the veins. Then came the time of the second leg in El Salvador, and here, hell began. The El Salvadoran fans gave the Honduran team a mafia-like reception, throwing dead rats and rotten eggs at their hotel. On the day of the match, they raised a rag instead of the Honduran flag and burned it in the stadium. El Salvador won 3-0, but the Honduran players had to escape from the stadium in military vehicles so they wouldn't be slaughtered. But the bitter, mind-boggling joke, do you know what happened 3 weeks later? El Salvador was not satisfied with the victory, so it sent warplanes and bombed the capital of Honduras. Yes, because of the football match, the El Salvadoran army moved its tanks and stormed the Honduran border, and an official war began between the two countries. A war in which they used planes and cannons, and it lasted for 100 full hours. The result was more than 3,000 dead, the destruction of entire villages, and the displacement of thousands of people. All of this because football fans could not bear the pressure of the matches. This story, which has been recorded in history as the Football War, proves to you that blind fanaticism, when mixed with ignorance, turns a 90-minute game into a hell that burns entire countries. And we move on to the 1994 World Cup in America. The bottom line is that the Colombian national team at that time was not just a team. It was terrifying. They were strong contenders to win the World Cup and played a series of matches without defeat. The whole country was in a state of euphoria. But behind this team was a hidden nightmare called the mafia and drug cartels. The drug cartels in Colombia were betting millions of dollars in the black market on their national team winning the tournament. So the game wasn't about the cup, it was about the mafia's money. But in the group stage, something unexpected happened. Colombia was playing a crucial match against the USA, and in the 34th minute, the usually composed and well-mannered Colombian defender Andres Escobar tried to clear a cross. But by mistake, the ball hit his leg and went into his own net, an own goal. The match ended with Colombia's defeat and their elimination from the World Cup in disgrace. The Colombian mafia and the gambling cartels lost millions in a single second because of a defender's mistake. Andres Escobar was devastated. He wrote an article in the newspaper apologizing to the people, saying a heartbreaking sentence: "Life doesn't end here." But the bitter truth was that his life truly was about to end there. A few days after returning to Colombia, Andres was sitting in his car outside a restaurant in Medellin when suddenly 3 mafia gang members surrounded him and began cursing and insulting him for the reverse target. Before he could explain or speak, they pulled out their guns and emptied 6 bullets into his chest in cold blood. The mind-boggling thing that shows the filth of fanaticism is that with every bullet they fired at him, the killers were screaming and saying, "Goal! Yes, by God!" as if they were punishing him for the reverse target with real bullets into his heart. The bottom line, folks, is that the assassination of Escobar shook the whole world and proved that if football is tainted by gambling money, the mafia, and blind fanaticism, it turns into a human slaughterhouse. Andres died because he made a mistake in a game and paid with his life. He was drunk and accidentally got caught in a net. So as not to be unfair to football and turn it all into nightmares, the World Cup always gives us moments of pure magic. Goals that live on in memory and tears of joy that unite hearts. But the problem is that this magic sometimes comes with a terrifying price. Behind it are companies and millions that pressure players until their minds explode. This brings us to the 1998 World Cup final between Brazil and France, the biggest medical and commercial mystery in the history of modern football. Our hero here is Ronaldo, the phenomenon, the best player on the planet at the time, the man who terrified the world's defenses. In short, all of Brazil, the sponsors, and FIFA were relying on Ronaldo to bring home the cup. The psychological pressure on him was immense. On the day of the final, specifically after lunch, what baffled the world to this day happened. His roommate, Roberto Carlos, heard strange noises. He turned around and found Ronaldo on the floor, convulsing terribly, with white foam coming from his mouth. Ronaldo went into a complete nervous breakdown, his body shaking uncontrollably. He was immediately taken to the hospital, and the doctors were in shock. His heart rate dropped to 18 beats per minute, but he was literally between life and death. The coach removed Ronaldo's name from the squad. The starting lineup for the final was leaked, and the press was shocked. But the shocking twist came 40 minutes before the match. Ronaldo arrived at the stadium looking pale and told the coach, "I'm playing." The bottom line, which makes you doubt everything, is that the coach reinstated his name to the lineup, and Ronaldo went onto the field. But the player who went onto the field wasn't the phenomenon. He was just a ghost walking on the field. Brazil lost 3-0 to France, and Ronaldo was completely out of it. The questions that remain unanswered to this day are, who forced Ronaldo to play when he had just recovered from an epileptic seizure? Was it the major sportswear company, the official sponsor, that threatened to terminate the contracts if the star player didn't play? Or was it political pressure? Or a medical conspiracy to make Brazil lose? The bottom line, folks, is that the Ronaldo 1998 story proves that players in the World Cup are sometimes not human beings, but merely money-printing machines for companies. And if the machine breaks down, they force it to work, even if it costs them their lives. We conclude our journey through World Cup nightmares with the closest story to our own. A story without blood or mafia involvement, but rather a third world war waged in the media and on principles. The 2022 Qatar World Cup. The bottom line, folks, is that from the day FIFA announced Qatar's winning bid, the Western media went into a frenzy. They unleashed their hypocrisy, talking about workers' rights and the weather just to tarnish the tournament. But the real nightmare for the West came just 48 hours before the tournament, when Qatar issued a sovereign decision worthy of study, banning the sale of alcohol around the stadiums. The European press lost their minds, saying fans would die of boredom. But what happened? The fans were surprised by the safety and the most organized tournament in history. Families attended at night in complete safety, to the point that British police released an official report stating that for the first time in England's history, not a single English fan was arrested. This summer, the World Cup landed in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and almost immediately, it collided with America's immigration politics. The name at the center of it? Omar Artan, a Somali referee, one of only 52 selected worldwide by FIFA for this tournament, and said to be the first Somali official in World Cup history. He landed in Miami with a valid visa. U.S. Customs and Border Protection pulled him aside for additional inspection and denied him entry, citing vetting concerns. An anonymous administration official later told reporters it involved alleged association with suspected members of terror organizations. No evidence was made public. Artan said he was questioned for hours about a militant group he says he knows nothing about. FIFA's response was carefully neutral. Host governments control their own borders. Full stop. That's true. And it's also the exact same principle Qatar used to defend its own sovereign decisions in 2022. Different country, same argument, very different reaction from the international press. Artan flew home. Somalia gave him a hero's welcome. Flowers, flags, a stadium full of people, cheering for a referee, not a team. And that's not all. Where are the human rights they keep harping on about? We saw blatant racism and humiliating searches of players from some teams, like what happened with the Iranian delegations and others. They're treated like criminals, not athletes. So the honest comparison isn't Qatar good, America bad, or vice versa. It's this. Every host nation brings its own politics into the stadium, whether that's alcohol law, labor law, or immigration law. The question worth asking isn't which country is more hypocritical. It's whether FIFA should keep awarding the world's biggest tournament to countries without asking harder questions about what happens to the people who aren't superstar athletes. The referees, the journalists, the migrant workers, the fans who don't look like the expected tourist. The point, my friend, is that football is a great game, an outlet for people, and it has a magic that makes you forget your worries. But as soon as blind fanaticism or dirty money enters it, it turns from a sport into a human meat grinder. Enjoy the game, support your team, but don't let 90 minutes of running after a leather ball make you forget your humanity or your principles, or make you lose a person because of a fanaticism that hasn't even been around for a year. The question for this episode is this: which World Cup host has impressed you the most in history, and what made that tournament so memorable? Looking ahead to 2026, who do you think will lift the trophy? And in the eternal debate, Messi or Ronaldo? Share your opinion in the comments below. I read them all, and I'm honored to know you. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons so we can grow this community and keep bringing you the best stories. You've truly made our day, you beasts. See you in the next video with an even bigger and better story.